A while ago, I purchased this book, Stories of Lost Israel in Folklore by James B. Haggard. In it, he analyzes 11 of the Grimm's fairy tales and assigns to them symbolism from the history of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. The brothers Grimm, Jacob and Wilhelm, were cultural researchers and authors in the early 1800s. They had a curiosity for old German folklore, and they desired to preserve it. This turned into a lifelong task as they worked together collecting and publishing German and Scandinavian fairy tales of children in cottages and castles in the towns and forests of Germany. They popularized the stories such as Cinderella, the Frog Prince, Hansel and Gretel, Rumpelstiltskin, Sleeping Beauty, and Snow White. In 1812, they published their first collection and called it Children's and Household Tales. Isaac Moseson first alerted me to the work of the Grimm's brothers regarding another collection of lost children. These children are words. The Grimm's brothers also collected words for a German dictionary they were building. They noticed certain consonant sounds of old German words shifted in a predictable way into modern German. They called the phenomenon Grimm's Law, and linguists still use this law today. Isaac Moseson referred to the Grimm's brothers' work as he finds and identifies lost pure Hebrew, or what he calls Edenic words, hidden in languages around the world, just as lost Israelites are hidden in populations around the world today. Collecting lost words and lost folklore within folktales was to Willem and Jacob Grimm like discovering a pure form of culture and literature. Their collection gradually grew to over 200 stories, not written by them, but faithfully collected and recorded by them. Excuse me. The stories were dictated to Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm by a lady named Dorothea, who Wilhelm eventually married. She had been told these stories by her old nurse, who remembered them in vivid detail. As Dorothea was relating them to the brothers, she would periodically stop and correct herself to get the exact details right. What a profound wealth of information and insight she brought to the world. Because of her, these important folk tales about the lost Israelite tribes have been preserved as an important part of our Israelite history in story form. And it has spread all over the world to charm and entertain and quietly inform lost Israelite children for centuries. This book, Stories from Lost Israel in Folklore by Mr. Haggard, demonstrates that these tales that came to us from a Saxon storyteller, a son of Isaac, deep in the forest of Saxony, Germany, are symbolic of lost Israelites that passed through, heading northwest as Germanic tribes driven onward towards their ultimate destination. This was the cottages and castles of England for the Joseph tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, then Ephraim's offshoots in the Commonwealth of Great Britain, the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The other Western Bible nations were also founded by lost Israelite tribes. Asher went to Ireland. Zebulun went to Holland. Reuben went to France. Benjamin to Belgium. Dan to Denmark. Naphtali to Norway. Issachar to Finland. The tribe of Gad, or the Goths, to Sweden, and so forth. One obvious metaphorical tale in this book is called 12 Brothers. Of course, this could all be a coincidence, but the youngest brother in the tale of 12 brothers is Benjamin, and all the 12 brothers are cast out of their home and must fend for themselves in a dangerous forest. The story of Snow White is reminiscent of Israel as a princess born to a king and queen, but lost in a forest and taken in by 7 dwarves, which the author likens to the 7 Christian churches of the book of Revelation. In the story, Snow White consumes a poison apple from a witch who personifies Rome, and she falls asleep but is healed and awakened when the piece of poison apple miraculously falls out of her mouth. In addition to metaphors from the Hebrew Bible, the stories possess definite Christian symbolism, which was and is the religion that the tribes followed for 2,000 years. It taught them civility and brought them under the thumb of Rome. It also hid their Hebrew identity very well. No one guessed it. Then gradually over the years, the tribes of Israel rebelled and became Protestants, and then were again oppressed by Rome, and so it went back and forth. The brother and sister, Hansel and Gretel, were the two branches or two kingdoms of Israel, north and south, Israel and Judah, whose father was torn because he was forced to turn them out of their home. We see them wandering through the forest and coming upon a castle in a clearing. It belongs to a wicked witch, which again is Rome, but they manage to resist her evil plans to eat them. They save themselves by pushing her into the oven. Jack, as an abbreviation for Jacob, in Jack and the Beanstalk, who climbs high up the beanstalk, is reminiscent of the ladder Jacob dreamed he saw going up to heaven. Jack must escape a dangerous giant, and in the end he wins, and the giant crashes to earth and dies. Incidentally, later the same Jack, or Yaakov, appears in British and American folklore in The House That Jack Built, Jack and Jill, Jack Be Nimble, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder, and in the American Yank, in Yankee Doodle. Various other characters in the Grimm's fairy tales are other figures in European history. The reader can pick up these historical references and learn what is happening to the tribes as they wander as lost children in the woods and wilderness and migrated northwest. Sleeping Beauty is the princess again, lost Israel. She is cursed by the wicked fairy to die by pricking her finger on a needle. Despite her father, the king, destroying all the needles and spinning wheels in the land, the fair maiden does prick her finger and falls asleep for 100 years. In the end, she is awakened by the kiss of a handsome prince, and they are married and live happily ever after. In the story of poor little Red Riding Hood, she and her grandmother are devoured by the big bad wolf, who is Rome. Then the brave woodcutter opens the wolf and releases them, and miraculously still alive, and so the recurring theme goes on. I recommend this book, Stories of Lost Israel in Folklore, because it draws the reader into the history of the lost 10 tribes while it weaves their adventures into the tales. In the end, we are surprised to discover the tales were written about us. They are our history, our stories. The original version of Grimm's fairy tales were dark, often demonic, and contained bad things, some of which were purged out for modern children. But remember, when the tribes were cast out of the promised land, it was because of their Baal worship, which involved terrible treatment of children, behavior that was grim and dark, and even child sacrifice. Israel was doomed to be God's dear lost children wandering among the nations until he was done cleansing out our wickedness. This brings us to today. Where are we in the stories of lost Israel in folklore? Well, the prince has kissed the princess, and we are now awakening. We are discovering our identity as Israelites, and we recognize the tales are our history, with the repeating theme of lost and found children in an enchanted sleep for many years, and then awakening, dying, and coming back to life again. The happily ever after ending is the exact scenario that is now being played out by the lost 10 tribes of northern Israel, who were cast from the Holy Land and lost their identity as a chosen people. We were seemingly dead or in an enchanted sleep, all the while alive in full view, but disguised so we could fulfill our destiny of uplifting and civilizing the world, even as God chastened and reformed us. Without anyone knowing, we were the Hebrews. The saga of the lost wandering 10 tribes of Israel and their final awakening and return is absolutely the greatest adventure story in world history, and today we are privileged to be a part of the happy ending. Thank you.